Restoration Plan. Through this connection, we will join the journey to continue the restoration, revitalisation and reclamation of Tākaro through, with and by tangata whenua at all levels and through a very distinctive cultural pathway. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi nui ki a koe e te tuahine, ka hoa atu te rākau kōrero ki a koe. Ka pai, tēnā koe.
Kia ora whānau. Tuatahi tēnā koe Pianika mō te whakatūwhira I tō tātou nei hui topa. Tuarua, e rere ana ngā mihi aroha ki a koutou te whānau Hemara, me te whānau Maraikura, moi maira e Nani Waima, e Auntie Nan. Kia tātou ngā kānohi ora, nei rā te mihi mai oha ki a koutou katoa, I tēnei wā o hene raumati. Ko waio, ko Nikki Penetito-Hemara tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Ngāti Ranginui, Ngāti Kahungunu, te whakatōhia me Ngāti Porau. E noho ana au kei tāmaki makaurau ki te tonga. E mahi ana hau hei kai whakahaere matua ki Kori Collab, he mātanga Māori Tākaro ki hi Aotearoa hoki. Engari, ko taku tūranga matua, he māma ki aku tamariki e whā. Kia ora whānau, I'm Nikki. I descend from iwi which will largely reside on the east coast of the North Island, starting with Tauranga and heading to Opotiki and then down Highway 35 to Ruatoria and then on to Te Hauke or the Central Hawke's Bay. I'm a proud South Aucklander, currently reside in Otara, but grew up in Manurewa, which is a bit of a sin. Sort of like moving the area codes is not the go out south, but yep. I'm the managing director for Kori Collab, our whānau business, and am also leading Māori play currently at Sport New Zealand, Ihi Aotearoa, and I'm a mama of 3 kōtero and 1 tama. Yeah, what else? I guess just today is an opportunity to unpack Sport New Zealand Ihi Aotearoa's newly launched play plan for the next 3-year strategic period. The name of the plan is Kia Hīanga, and today I just thought I'd share some of the insights into the journey we went on as a play unit in the design and the development of Kia Hīanga, as well as perhaps provide some insight into Maui Hīanga, which is the framework we use to form the backbone and the structure for the plan. But before we do that, I thought I'd take the window of opportunity to quickly revisit some of the previous work around Māori play in the past, present and future. While our tangata tiriti work has been underway for quite a number of years now, the Māori Voices of Play Insights report, which was released in 2020, was essentially one of Sport New Zealand's first culturally distinctive perspective of play from a Te Ao Māori worldview. The report itself collected and collated the voices and lived experiences of Māori in the form of insights, and then were later synthesized into personas. And then at the end of the report, it concluded with a list of short and long-term priorities for Sport New Zealand, including a set of recommendations for some further action, some of which are actually the focus of some of the tangata whenua actions that are built into Kia Hīanga. So I thought that would be a cool place to start. So what is Tākaro? Te Ahu Kāramu Charles Royal uses the whakatauki kia kawea tātou te rehia in his work, which communicates the kaupapa of the whare tapere, and in traditional times the whare tapere were, I guess, not always physical spaces, but conscious spaces that our tupuna created to encourage and to celebrate rehia and Tākaro as cultural expressions. The verb kawea means to be carried or to be taken by, and rehia means joy, fun, entertainment. So to let us be taken by the spirit of joy and entertainment. I believe that kawea speaks to the magic of play. So when our tamariki carry their culture and their language and their customs with them as they engage in some playful activity, I guess with a sense of maybe freedom and imagination. So yeah, if we take a step back and have a look at Māori play in the past, I've grabbed a quote here which might transport some whānau back to a time in their past where they are reminded of themselves as tamariki nohi nohi as they play. So if I read the quote, my nan and my aunties would talk about our awa being their playground growing up. Every single day after school, they would go to the river because they lived so close. At the moment, you definitely don't want to swim in our awa. It's very polluted, but I can still imagine it in my mind. There's a bridge they used to cross to catch the bus, and they used to jump off of there. We had one of the biggest meatworks, and in the afternoon, the drain from the meatworks would flow blood into our river. They would still swim there, and because the ika would feed off of the blood, one of the kazi's would be fishing for kai while the kids were swimming. So yeah, I just, perhaps if that rings any truth for you or brings up any memories, maybe chuck them in the chat. Might spark some of your own play memories growing up in Aotearoa. But essentially, participants described play in the past as being multi-purpose, integrated into their lives, into their daily activities, whether that was walking home from school, whether that was gathering kai, whether it was jobs around the house or the farm. Play provided multiple opportunities, not only to have fun, but to learn life skills as well. Cool, so if we shift to contemporary today, I guess, and explore how play has evolved since we were tamaiti, I guess, here's another few insights. Play is now colonized. I feel like play is now overly structured because our lives in urban settings deem it so. There is so much in our modern environment that has impacted negatively on our Māori ways of playing. We don't live in villages where we have the same opportunities to connect with whānau easily. So play is now isolated to our social settings, which are less whakapapa whānau based. For example, engaging with your neighbours or your work friends or your kura friends. And then this other quote from Te Miri Rangi, there's plenty of parks with playgrounds, but very few that are developed from a kaupapa Māori perspective. If I think about places and environs, I see a proliferation of non-Māori places. So both of those, I guess, highlight that when we ask participants to describe, I guess, the current reality of Māori play, there was an undertone in the kōrero that play in the past, not play in the present, but play in the past was less structured, was more autonomous, so we had more freedom, and was more Māori than play in the present. So again, maybe take the opportunity to think about your own playful experiences and maybe reflect on how play has evolved since you were a tamaiti. And yep, chuck them down in the chat. So Māori play in the future, if we move to the future, when we ask participants to describe their future aspirations for Māori play, heaps or considerable discussion, I guess, centered on ways to explore and solidify a strong cultural identity, and that's reflected in the quote. This, I guess, includes opportunities to utilize te reo Māori, to restore some of our cultural practices of old that we've, I guess, lost along the way, to live by our Māori principles, to practice Māori ways of knowing, being and doing, to connect with whakapapa, the taiao, and to deepen levels of mātauranga through play. Those were all really kind of idealistic, but then to top that off, not only did whānau Māori want that, but they also wanted the latest technological advances, the gaming, the VR, the AR, the drones, the apps, the video capture, and funnily enough, that those things weren't just isolated to our rangatahi. Many of our pakeke and even kaumātua were purchasing drones. Darius Koro is one of them who, you know, has no clue on how to use it, but is keen and interested and wants to have a bit of a titu. So essentially, I think if you think about our own play experiences of the past, and we compare that to the now, our whānau are wanting the best of both worlds, and I guess why shouldn't they have that opportunity? So I guess this sort of highlights too that we've got to be a little bit careful around some of our kōrero related to technology and its impact. Whilst we know that those risks and those boundaries probably need to be put in place, yeah, our whānau still want all of the technological advances too. So that was real brief whānau, like there's a big report. I think Pianika's going to chuck it up in the chat, or may have already done so. But yeah, I guess just a consideration of some of the lived experiences and quotes and insights that were shared with us. Really, these were in 2019. Actually, the report was released in 2020, but those insights were gathered in 2019. Some of which we have built on in some of our mahi along the journey, and some which have been built into Kia Hīanga as our, I guess, aspiration for what we would like the future of play to look like in Aotearoa New Zealand. So moving on to that, moving on to Kia Hīanga. So if we start with the name, whānau, the name of the plan Kia Hīanga derives from the kupu Poro Hīanga. Those of you who are from Ngāti Porou will probably know that kupu. The name was decided by our Rautaki Māori team as a collective, and was inspired actually by the collective Ngāti Porou lineage in the team at the time. It was also, though, inspired by the role of tamariki in exploring boundaries through play. So perhaps unlike the kupu used earlier, like they're here, Hīanga is probably more associated with the nanakia, the tricky, the hautatu, the mischievous, the curious, the cheeky, the fearless nature of play, which is reflected in the whakatauki here by Moana-Lee Raihania. So mā te Hīanga, ka tipu te tamaiti, by being mischievous, the child will grow. And I guess those attitudes and behaviours are inherent in our tamariki anyway. Those of you who are parents will know this. And are, I guess, vital as they learn their place in this world. But I guess with the addition of kia before Hīanga, Kia Hīanga is also, for Sport New Zealand, Ihi Aotearoa, as a call to action. So we know that the journeys of Māui are an example of Hīanga characteristics at play. The Māui stories tell of his adventures and the risks he takes and the path less travelled, and the lessons, all the lessons that he learns along the way. So Kia Hīanga for us is our line in the sand, I guess. It shows our leadership position and how we intend on working in a bicultural context. And so when you, I think Pianika will chuck up the link to Kia Hīanga in the chat as well, or may have already done so. So you'll notice that within it, it looks different to other Sport New Zealand documents or reports or strategies. I hope it encourages our partners and collaborators to, our partners to collaborate with us and embrace, I guess, the learning journey that we're on as an organisation around being bicultural and what that means. But also that it's playful. I hope it's not, because it wouldn't be living up to its name if it was maroke. Yeah, but anyway, funnily enough, the name of the plan was the very last thing that happened, because once we'd settled on the content, the name needed to have a whakapapa which both threaded through each of our points in the journey, which actually, just for context, I think we started the beginning of the writing of this plan maybe end of 2020 or 2021, and we went through a number of iterations with regards to it, and lots of pivots, I guess. But it needed to thread through that. It needed to include our pūrākau, which I'll talk you through in a second. It needed to embed our framework. It needed to talk to our whakatauki, our karakia, which you'll see in here, and other pieces of work too. So not just within the play space, but it had to have a whakapapa to other pieces of work. For example, te aho a Ihi Aotearoa, which is our Māori activation plan, and you'll see Kia Hīanga present in there as well. And maybe just to preface, the kōrero Kia Hīanga is Sport New Zealand's internal work plan. So it outlines how Ihi Aotearoa Sport New Zealand intend on achieving play outcomes in Aotearoa. And so, you know, we encourage others to come alongside us along the journey, but there's by all means no expectation that you have to pick this up and use it in your work as well. It's merely identifies where Ihi Aotearoa at and what we intend on doing, committing to, and the action we're looking to take. Cool. So the pūrākau that I guess anchors the plan is the pūrākau around Maui snaring, catching the sun. So if we start with story time whānau, more specifically pūrākau, I guess I asked the question of you, what do we know about stories? Our stories, I guess, the fact that our stories have lasted generations, thousands of years, is a testament to how our stories codified knowledge, codified values, and formed a real key role in the transmission of mātauranga across generations. Pūrākau or cultural narratives, loosely translated as cultural narratives, are littered with life lessons. Maui's one's definitely about his wild adventures, the stories of heroes and villains and love and fate, and all of those, I guess, inspire us to open up pathways to imagine. So I thought we'd start with story time. So I invite you guys to close your eyes for a moment and listen while I read the pūrākau and how we've articulated it in Kia Hīanga. About how Maui called the sun, but also while your eyes are closed and I want you to listen out for the key messages for some of the lessons Maui and his brothers learned along the way. Perhaps visualize the characters and their unique traits which enabled them to catch the sun and then release him again. And maybe finally imagine some of the opportunities to play that occurred along the journey. How's about a story of days gone by? A story that starts with the sun in the sky. A story of heroes, not villains, you'll see. A story of people with skills just like you and me. We once had a sun that hurried along by, and days were too short to gather some kai. Maui Pōtiki was a young man back then. He gathered his brothers and stated, now when we work together, it always ends best. When we're divided, we fall like the rest. So the brothers, all Maui, had their plans set. E hoa maa, said Mua, we'll need a big net. Taura nui, taura roa, taura kaha, taura toa. Maui roto gave karakia over the ropes to be sure. We'll teach the sun a lesson, so with net in tow, they prepared in earnest to make the sun slow. Maui Waho led their journey to the ends of known soil. Hard was the trail, but the brothers did toil. They built a large wall to ward off the heat. As the sun awoke early, his rays they did meet. Throw the net, shouted Taha, as his plan rang true. Your haste is now thwarted, shouted Pōtiki who jumped at the sun so entangled and distraught, his writhing and cursing resulting in naught. Severe was the beating that Pōtiki dished true. Your days of dashing, O sun, are now through. The sun then promised to meander each day, the brothers, all Maui, setting him on his way. Now think of all the things we can achieve in a day. There's more time to eat, share stories, and play. Remember the story of the brothers all five, and think of their mother Taranga, under whom they did thrive. So here ends our story of the brothers in fray. Kia kaha e hoa maa. Now let's go and play. Cool, whānau, so you can open your eyes. Cool. So yep, again, chuck it in the chat. What did you hear? What caught your attention? You'll notice that I guess there are karakia, waiata, haka, place names, whakatauki, apps, and even a Disney movie written about Maui and his feats. And all of those contribute to a unique view of play from an Aotearoa, I guess, perspective. One game, in fact, is whai. which is the shortened name for Te Whai Wawe Wawe a Maui. And there are many figures and patterns which are used alongside pūrākau as a way to transmit mātauranga Māori across generations, especially between some of our older kuiako mātua and our tamariki nohi nohi. So I thought, again, it would be dry if I didn't engage in some play. I learnt a figure from Dr. Hauati Hapopa called Te Hīanga I Te Rā. So Te Hīanga meaning to tie up, Te Rā being, I guess, the shorter version of Tamanui Te Rā. So I thought we'd have a jam, if that's all right, Kia Nika. Might just move this down. Okay, so I've got my tauira whānau. It's a real colourful one, $5 from the warehouse if you're keen. What's the first move? Yeah, just your classic move, your roa through the middles. And then you'll see 3 loops. So you've got io nui, io roa, io matua, the pinkies. And then you want your ko nui to come and pick up the second to last string on your ko iti and pull that back. And then you want your ko roa again to come and pick up this top string, this pink one from your ko nui, and pull that back. And if I close my hands, you'll see that there's 2 loops on either or all 4 of my fingers. Then you want the back loop, so in this case it's green, to come over your pinky finger, your ko roa, and give it a tug on either side, and then the same on your thumbs. Oh, we could not have done this wrong. Yeah, cool. Ka pai. And so now you've got just 4, it's not doubled up anymore. So those 4 loops on all of your fingers are representative of 4 of the 5 Maui brothers. So Maui Mua, Maui Roto, Maui Taha, and Maui Waho. And then this one that's loose down the bottom, that's representative of Maui Pōtiki. The next move, but before I do it, is you want to put Maui Pōtiki in your waha. Actually, I will do it. And then you'll see there's a bit of a hole in the middle. I'll take that out for a second. That hole in the middle is the net, I guess, that helps snare the sun. And so at this point, we like to, in our house anyway, have a kōrero with the kids about they get to put their hand in the middle, and then you say, oh, look, there's not enough time in the day to play. And then they put their hand in the middle, and then you squeeze 3 times, and then you close the net on their hand. And then you can have the kōrero again with them. They think it's funny. They try to pull it out and they can't. And so, you know, it becomes a bit of a kēmu. And you can talk to the stories of Maui and say things like, you know, now we're wanting more time in the day to eat, to share stories, to play. So can you please slow down? And then they take their hand out, and it's a cool little kēmu. Anyway, I guess, yeah. The power of play in this context is it's not just a cup and saucer whānau. It's not just a cup and saucer. It's not just an Eiffel Tower. It has a little bit more meaning, and it relates to some of our ancestors, our ancestor, the sun. Okay, moving on. So Kia Hīanga, what is it? I guess there are a number of key, both international and national drivers, which help to inform our strategic direction for Kia Hīanga, some of which aren't on the board, on the slide. Things like the international Article 31 of the United Nations Rights of the Child policy. That's one, so that's prioritized. The National Child, Youth and Wellbeing Strategy and the vision for that. We've got our cross-government National Physical Activity and Play Plan, which is a collective of government organizations who are looking at aspirations and outcomes related to physical activity and play. And then I guess for us, one of the tuakana strategies, or the tuakana strategy, is Everybody Active, which is our 2020 to 2024 strategy, organization-wide strategy. But I guess at the end of the day, Kia Hīanga aims to shine a light on the people, the organizations, the philosophies, the connections, I guess all of which advocate for opportunities to play in Aotearoa. We want to develop national and regional and local play system leaders and leadership. We want to ensure the stability and longevity of things like policy and investment, that are, I guess, investments that are equitable and inclusive. We want to support learning and development opportunities for a workforce or a play workforce. And then the other thing, the one that is up on there, which is certainly important for the way in which we've framed and looked to implement Kia Hīanga, is the continuation of efforts to restore and revitalize and reclaim and relearn practices surrounding Tākaro. So I guess in a nutshell, it's Sport New Zealand's commitment and all of the actions that are associated with those commitments to ensure that we're getting more play opportunities, more accessible opportunities, enabling and supporting play opportunities across the country. The approach. So during the development of Kia Hīanga, there were a number of significant pieces of work across the business, which were also in the pipeline at the time. The futures work, if you Google the Papa Noho or futures work or Te Tuara and Sport New Zealand, there's a number of reports there. So the futures work was a large piece of work which looked at the 2045 vision for the play active rec and sports sector or system. And it was a significant piece of work which informed the approach we wish to take for Kia Hīanga. In terms of reimagining a bicultural future with partnership at the forefront, I guess. So the approach is related to a whakaaro as a partnership model. It's not unique to Sport New Zealand. There's many organisations out there that have taken the same or similar approach. The two hulls are representative of Tangata Whenua and Tangata Tiriti, and then the Papa Noho, which joins the two hulls, identifies, I guess, the bicultural space where we're learning, sharing, having kai together, deciding together, having wānanga together. Our intention with that is to honour, I guess, our commitment to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the principles of partnership, protection and participation. And I guess it's by actively weaving those two journeys, those two worldviews together. The other thing which is important to note is that as we strive to give people an opportunity to collaborate with us, that both those worldviews are honoured and that our kōrero reflects an equal partnership. And like, I'd love to preface this right here with, while we acknowledge that we may not have all the answers yet, I guess we are really determined to seek a future that represents our unique identity, and I hope that's reflected in Kia Hīanga. Maybe just for a little bit more insight, Sport New Zealand's approach to date has really been, especially under the leadership of Moana-Lee Raihania at the time, was to really carve out a strong Māori pathway, and you will see that in the launch of Te Pāke o Ihi Aotearoa, our Māori outcomes framework, and Te Ahua Ihi Aotearoa, our Māori activation plan. Among other things, those are just some of the most recent. And I guess that was the carving out a strong Māori pathway was purposeful in our attempt to kickstart the work in the tangata whenua space. And it has proved to be a way for us as Māori to learn, or in this case, sometimes relearn and reclaim and restore those rewords, some of our traditional knowledge systems as Māori, without having the distraction of having to disseminate those learnings wider. So if you're Māori and you're in an organisation which is driving some real a by Māori for Māori approach, you'll know that when we may have just relearnt something. Let's just say it's you know, how do we as Māori define Tākaro, and as soon as we learn it, we've got to share it, or we're asked to share it wider, but it may not have really landed at that point. So it needs some sort of time to settle. Actually, the Māori Voices of Play Insights report was an example of that. Like that it was sitting in the pipeline for probably about a year so that we could start to build some of the foundations of the work that we wanted to do before it was then launched released to the country on our website. And that was purposeful. It was purposeful so that we could understand the system a little bit better before we then, shared it wider. However, I guess our attention must now, as we've built some of these foundations, must turn to how we articulate and work and learn and share within the papanoho. Notwithstanding the need, I guess, though, to continue to carve out that tangata whenua space. That's not what we're doing. It's just probably more an and as opposed to a focused effort here only. It's that and also beginning to learn and understand what this papanoho looks like for us. So yeah, we realized that there is an opportunity now to engage in this papanoho space, understand what it looks like, share and learn from the experiences of each other, and start to begin to make some decisions together. Cool. What is our time?
Cool. So it's just 11:34. Are you free for any pātai?
Cool. Yeah. No worries. Jump in.
Ka pai. So we just have a couple pātai. For time po whānau, how do we make time for play in our everyday whānau activities?
Yeah, it's like I know we got 4 tamariki whānau, so we know. One of the biggest things that I would encourage is that you don't necessarily isolate it out, that you yourself are playful, like be a playful mum doing the dishes, be a playful dad doing the lawns, like it doesn't have to be a scheduled thing. And so I think one of the strongest things for our tamariki to see is that it's being role modeled by their parents all the time, that they're playful all the time. And then those lessons and learnings will come as they mimic what their parents are up to. I swear it's not a cop-out. Like our tamariki too have time on technology and stuff like that when mama's got to do a webinar or but it's about really just making it a part of your life as opposed to having it be that thing that gets scheduled in from 4 till 5 before witching hour, 4 till 5 after school. And then also just allowing them the space to play themselves, allow them the freedom to imagine, talk to them about some stories.
Right. No, totally tautoko what you're saying. And I think incorporating in everyday things, like for my tama, he doesn't like brushing his teeth. So we need to do something fun so that he enjoys parahi niho.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with everything that you just said. Incorporating it wherever we can with our whānau, and the small things. There is another pātai. So when whānau are going through trauma, how might play help them, and what activities can we do with whānau going through trauma and not connected to te ao Māori?
Oh, sorry, what was the last part to that? Not connected to te ao Māori. Or when they're not.
Aye.
Yeah.
So whānau going through trauma not connected to te ao Māori, what activities might help them with play?
One of the big things that we do, which is connected to te ao Māori, I guess, is get out of the concrete jungle. So we live in Tāmaki, and one of the biggest things for us is to place our feet on our whenua. It might be the smallest of things, but it's the way it resets your body is and the things that you engage in those spaces, the memories that get brought up in those places, and the things that you remember and share are really important. What else? Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing, and it goes back to my previous answer, is just not seeing it as something that needs to happen in isolation from anything else that you're doing as a whānau, you know, from waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth. And I know these are all relatively glorified, and this doesn't happen every day in the Penetito-Hemara whānau house, you know, whānau. So let's be honest, you know, there's tune-ups that happen all the time as well. But you know the joy that you get from seeing your tamariki play. And then why would you not want to be a part of that? Those are the things that I would probably throw back at our whānau is remembering, yeah, what it was like for you. And maybe like if I just share this, so Dario and I went back to our whānau. We have a whānau hui, Penetito hui every year, and the whānau hui was on at the Marae Waharoa. And we got told that, you know, we've got this, and this is the example of scheduling Tākaro in. So we got told that we were on the agenda whānau for 12 p.m. or lunchtime, and that got pushed back because then there was all this kōrero hui that needed to happen about the kuhu account and the koha account and the urupa cleanup and all these things that sort of kept pushing our little session back, and then it was pushed back to just before dinner, and then it was pushed back to after dinner. Anyway, it was like 9 p.m. when we ended up, like, you know, they're like, I'm really sorry, you know, these poor kids, they always get left out of our hui and never got any time to Tākaro. And I was just like, no, don't worry about the tamariki, they're sweet. They've been playing since the time you woke them up to the time that they're going to be going to sleep. They've been doing all of these things. It's not them that we need to focus on. It's actually our pakeke, our older ones who have been in hui mode all day. And anyway, so we started our first sort of activity or game, and our kaumātua sort of just sat down in their kaumātua chairs like this and sort of leant back, and then we were like, what are you up to? And then they're like, well, we're just, you know, they pulled their chair up and they were like trying to get closer to the action. And then we're like, what are you up to? And they're like, well, we're just going to sit down here. And we're like, no, come on, let's play. And it was almost like they needed permission to engage with all the rest of us and have some fun. And I tell you what, like the kaumātua were the most giggly, like little kids that we've seen in a while. So, you know, that's probably the lesson is don't try and schedule it in, just let it happen in real time. Don't forget about the roles that the different age groups sort of assume. The parent are going to wash the kids, clean the house and all of these things, and make, you know, create opportunity to play in that. Sorry, that was a big long waffle.
Ka pai, o tēnā koe. Kia koe anō.
Ka pai. All right, so moving on whānau to Māui Hīanga, which is the framework that we use. And I guess, so, you know, why have we chosen Māui? Essentially, we acknowledge that for many people across the Pacific, that there's one common ancestor who stands out. Māui is one of them. Whether you're Māori mai, Pākehā mai, any, like Māui is a pivotal figure. But I guess perhaps what people don't know, or what people may not know, is that Māui had brothers, all named Māui too. So we also, I guess, acknowledge that there are variations. We've chosen 5: Māui Mua, Māui Roto, Māui Taha, sometimes Māui Pai is in there too, Māui Waho, Māui Pōtiki, Māui Tiki Tiki Aotaranga, some other names. But the diagram that you see here identifies the key components of Māui Hīanga. And like I said before, forms the backbone for the structure of the plan. So the 5 Māui brothers are represented by each of the fingers, starting with Māui Mua at the thumb, all the way to Māui Pōtiki being your core iti. And then the palm is representative of Taranga, who is the connector, who is the mother, who, you know, without her, the Māui brothers wouldn't exist. So that important connection acknowledges that, yeah, that without her, that they wouldn't. So I guess too, that's the crux of the framework. I'll talk in a sec around how we've embedded it into Kia Hīanga. But if we go back to the framework, to the pūrākau, the belief for us is that if we harness all the attributes of Māui and his brothers, coupled with the reflective practice of, or the wisdom of taranga, will create a sustainable environment for play to flourish in Aotearoa. So here are all our characters. And if we dive a little bit deeper into Maui Hīanga as a framework, but also as the structure for the plan, the illustrations that you see show that how each brother is aligned to an area of focus within Kia Hīanga, from leadership to insights to people and connectivity to practicing methodology to me. And then lastly, ways to pioneer new approaches that are unique and innovative and fresh and opportunistic. So what I thought I'll do is I'll give a bit of a brief explanation around the characteristics and the traits of each of the brothers, and then maybe talk through some of the opportunities within each of the areas of focus that will give you a bit of an indication as to where the mahi is targeted for us. So Maui Mua, starting with Maui Mua, is the Mata Mua, so the tuakana, the eldest sibling. If you think about the traits of being the firstborn, we're reminded that often they experience many of the firsts of us as parents, but also as them. They are the trailblazers. They're given lots of advice and guidance to their younger siblings. They're the role models. They're the responsible one, or supposed to be the responsible one, the accountable one, the one who's a little bit more planned, and perhaps the one who holds a bit of that helicopter view of what's going on. So within strategy and leadership, for us, we're focused on supporting new leadership and management positions related to play across the country. Those leaders, or these leaders, will be responsible for ensuring that play is a priority and that there are opportunities for, I guess, champions of play to connect and to network in, form a network even, and ultimately create a bit of collective support and hopefully influence change at all levels of the system. So that's Maui Mua, Maui Roto, could be thought of the brother who loves learning, loves to listen, observes, likes to have data and insights and evidence and rationale to back up any decision making. And perhaps could be thought of, he sort of looks like it there, like the overthinker. And I guess within insights and intelligence in Kia Hīanga, we're focused on capturing all the voices and lived experiences from young to old, to rural to urban, to across all different cultural contexts, in the hope and you know, your quantitative data, your qualitative data, in the hopes to, I guess, help us to support play development across Aotearoa and help us steer the waka in the right direction. Maui Taha is sort of your action-oriented one, the doer, the executor, the I dotter and the T crosser, the one that likes order and details and processes, checks and balances, and requires a bit more of a clear pathway, whether that be like a phased approach or a stepped approach, to know where he's heading and how we plan to get there. For us, when we zone in on practices and methodologies, we're keen to utilize both existing and develop new systems and processes which will help us guide, I guess, the development and growth of play and play outcomes across Aotearoa. Maui Waho is that person in the room who, I guess, that person in the room are strangers who people are automatically attracted to because of their charisma and their sass, and maybe they're the life of the party or that people magnet who genuinely enjoys connecting with you and forming relationships with you, and their energy is magnetic. They instantly fill a room. So they're the people. And I guess so from a people and connectivity perspective, we realize that, I guess at Sport New Zealand even, we're still in our infancy stages, and so need to really strengthen our connections, our partnerships with community and with potential partners. So we're keen, whānau, we're keen to connect with others, have them network into our growing number of play advocates out there. It's important to also to have someone to hold space to be able to celebrate successes and promote some of the sharing of awareness, knowledge and understanding, perhaps based on what we learn in the Maui Roto space, stuff like that. And then Maui Pōtiki is obviously the Pōtiki, the youngest sibling, the Teina. He's the brother which many of the feats within the stories of Maui are attributed to. But think about it, he had that ability to learn from all of his older siblings. I'm not the pōtiki whānau, so I have a little bit of a thought about the pōtiki in the family. They're a little bit entitled, a little bit spoiled, but then what comes with that is that like impossible is nothing mentality, you know, like really go out there, have a bit of a fire in their belly, that fearless nature to be disruptive, and to come up with new, more innovative ideas, spark interest in innovation and opportunity. And so for us, when it comes to innovation and opportunity, we really want to lean into that impossible is nothing mentality, that out the box thinking, and ensure that we've got funds and investments for play that are readily available, and can help to evolve and grow and nurture play outcomes within the system. And then lastly, we've got taranga, again, mama to them all. And so as mama and as a wahine, she provides a balance in both gendered perspectives, calming, nurturing, a lot of, I guess, a bit more thoughtful. With age comes wisdom. She's also the matriarch. So that provides a bit more balance as well. She's the key connect, and so her voice is woven throughout, just for context, her voice is woven throughout each of the sections. So she's a Maui Mua, she's a Maui Roto, Maui Taha, Maui Waho, and Maui Pōtiki, and offers reflections and provocations and alternative perspectives for future, I guess, consideration. She's a little bit like that one on the shoulder that's just like, hold on, have you thought about? And so, yeah, for us, that balance and reflective practice from taranga will help to provide those checks and balances needed. She'll be that one to do the checkmate, understanding what we're doing and our rationale for why we're doing what we're doing, having an awareness of if we've achieved what we set out to do, and knowing how we're going to evaluate, monitor, and measure against our intended outcomes we're looking to achieve is really paramount. Here's an example, really quickly, here's an example of one of the bicultural commitments within Maui Mua, and one of the tangata whenua actions within Maui Mua, and one of the tangata tiriti actions, just for context. So it's a bit of a zoom in. There's more actions, there's more commitments, but I just sort of plucked one of each just so you could see how we've embedded it in practice. So, for example, each of the commitments are bicultural, and then it sort of veers off into tangata whenua specific actions, tangata tiriti specific actions. So things like we'll actively work in a bicultural context to ensure that the tangata whenua and tangata tiriti worldviews are inherently a part of our DNA. Then within the tangata whenua actions, we'll increase Māori play leadership, which I've spoken about. And then tangata tiriti actions advocate for and influence the Aotearoa play system through government policy. So those are just examples, and then with Maui Mua, you'll also see taranga. So here's an example of some of the pātai that taranga would ask. So are we demonstrating strong leadership of the Aotearoa play system? Are the desired outcomes for tamariki at the centre of our decision making? Are these commitments and actions clear, relevant, and something everyone can connect to? So in a nutshell, like, I'm not going to go through every single section. I've given you a little bit of a taster and a bit of, I guess, a helicopter view of each of those. But my reflective question, I guess, for you guys is, can you see yourself in Kia Hīanga? I guess as not just a kaimahi, but as a parent, an auntie, an uncle, an advocate, a community champ who's driving change around Tākaro play. Do you relate to any of the characteristics or traits of any of the Maui brothers or even taranga? Yeah, and I guess, can you, as a kaimahi, can you see your work reflected in this plan? All of that is really good feedback for us whānau, because it enables us to be able to identify opportunities to connect in with you. So hella keen for your guys' feedback on that. Oh, raised hand. What does that mean? Oh no, okay. It would just be remiss of me. I'm just going to quickly flick through this. There's a Tākaro Māori page on our website that may highlight a whole lot of different mahi that we've been up to over the last couple of years. But actually, like, if I'm honest, those were all sort of helping us to build Kia Hīanga. we're at the point now where the rubber hits the road, and it's like mahi a te mahi. So really looking to achieve the outcomes, the outcomes for both tangata tiriti, tangata whenua in this next phase of mahi. But if you're looking for resources, they are there. And then I would encourage, this is one of the cool pieces of mahi over the last year that we've engaged in, has been with, this isn't it, but has been with the Oi Collective and Sport Northland, and understanding Tākaro and Tai Tokero. The report is called Hihiri Tingako, an insights report around what it looks like, a zone-in version of what it looks like in Tai Tokero play. She's going to hate this, hit the tuahine Trina Henare up if you're up north and you're wanting to really delve a little bit more deeper into that space. They got some cool kaupapa happening up there, from edible playground with underpinned by Māori kaupapa to one of my favorite kaupapa is a Tākaro kaupapa within looking at that within grave digging. So there's all this sort of mātauranga Māori that's getting shared around the practices surrounding grave digging, knowing that there's a need for that mātauranga to be passed on, and then all the playful opportunities that our tamariki engage in the urupa anyway, digging little holes, collecting flowers and putting them on all of the graves, and learning their whakapapa in the meantime, sharing stories between each other and stuff like that. So there's lots of cool kaupapa happening out there, whānau. The last thing I really wanted to mention is that, what's next for us is just karawhia, really. I've said it already, the actions as outlined in Kia Hīanga are already underway. One of the actions within Maui mua, or strategy and leadership, has been to increase Māori play leadership. We've been working really hard on that. We noticed that there was this imbalance in the waka. So with tangata tiriti and tangata whenua kaimahi within Sport New Zealand. So over the last year, we've been, putting the rationale in place. And over the last 3 months, a recruitment process for 2 new full-time roles focused on tangata whenua actions and outcomes has been prioritised. And we're in the mix of finalising agreements with the 2 new kaimahi that will likely replace the mahi that I've been doing in the contract space for Sport New Zealand. So that's encouraging. And we just encourage you to ruku, have a good read, whānau, circle back around, probably to Scott McKenzie, who is the play lead. If you have any pārtai, or if you have any light bulb moments, or just if you're wanting to connect in. Oh, that's a lot of talking. Back over to you, Pianika. You can have the rākau.
Tēnā koe. Wow, all I can say is, wow, that was like a lot to take in a great way. Cool. I think as a mama myself, a wahine Māori, a kaimahi in the public health services, utilising what you have talked about from Kia Hīanga, but also pūrākau and our ancestors, and not only our everyday lives, but in our workspaces at the system levels as well. I think it's definitely something that we need, and it was just awesome going through. And someone did ask, can you be more than one Maui? I would say, of course. So actually, we had a go in our play unit of relating our own sort of characteristics and traits. And actually, it's really cool, whānau, because what we understood really quickly is that we were missing all of the characteristics and traits related to Maui taha. So we definitely had the Portuguese, we definitely had the Maui mua, we had a few Maui waho people. I consider myself a bit of a Maui roto. I love learning, love mātauranga, I love just digging deeper and deeper into that. And we had Taranga, who was our constant sort of like checks and balances, keeping us on, on a straight and narrow. But Maui taha, we didn't have a lot of, and it was inhibiting us to be able to get through our mahi, get it done. We had all the visionaries, we had all the
insights to inform, but we actually were getting to the point where we couldn't get it over the line. And so, needed to find some ways to embrace our Māori taha as opposed to lean more into, we got heaps of Māori Pōtiki, and that was good for a little bit, but not always for the long-term goal, you know. So that was cool. Yeah, you can be more, and we found that we had probably a dominant and maybe a secondary, and then that we had ones that we would wear, like I guess Maui, who we were in the mahi space, Maui, who we were in the as our role as mama, as our role as sister. Yeah.
Kia ora. No, I think, talking about that balance as well, trying to keep that in everything that we do too. Yeah. I think we have one more minute, so I'm just going to close with tētahi karakia. But tēnei te mihi nui ki a koe te tuahine mō mahi, all of this mahi really, and thank you for coming along and sharing with us. And your details, which someone also asked, ngā mihi nui, he karakia whakamitinga. Kia taunga manaakitanga te mea ngaro ki ringa ki tēnā o tātai. Kia mahia ai te huama ki hiki, toi te kupu, toi te mana, koe ai whakariha, hei whakawātea, haumie, huie, tā ki e.
Kia ora te whānau, ngā mihi.